Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar all about Azure WAN. We're going to be getting started here in just 1 minute, so strap in and get ready. All right, let's take off here. So today we're going to be talking all about the new Azure WAN. I have two experts with me. I have Brandon Duclos. I can never say your last name. Duclos, sorry about that. And Brandon is the head of our networking practice. He can get into a lot of detail both in Azure and outside of Azure. And then we have Jason Milgram, and Jason heads up our Azure practice. He's an Azure MVP. And I believe there's only about 30 of you guys in the US now, right, Jason?
Yeah, currently there are 37 of us in the United States.
They keep multiplying on me. You know, it used to be in the 20s, now it's in the 30s. So, but Jason's been doing Azure and Azure related services for 9 years now. Is that right?
Since 2010.
Since 2010, great. And I'm Kevin Vogel. I'm the Vice President of Virtualization and Cloud here at Champion Solutions Group. So the first thing I'd like to do is just to ask you a couple poll questions, only 3 of them. We just want to get a feel for the audience, see what type of background you have. The first question is a real simple one. Do you have, or are you using Azure in any form or fashion right now? Yes or no? Real quick question. So about 30% of you have answered the question, and it looks like 91% are using Azure at this point. We got about 50, 60% now. It's going up there. Okay, so what that ended up, just so you know, our audience, 93% of you have or are using Azure in some form or fashion. Now, with this being all about networking, the next question is, have you deployed any SD-WAN technology in your environment? And if you have, if it's Checkpoint, if it's Citrix, if it's another one, just let us know. But it looks like right now, about 70% of you have not deployed any SD-WAN in your environments at all. So we got about 50% of the people answering the poll here. So, and Citrix has some of that, just so you know, the NetScalers and SD-WAN products it looks like people are using. So thank you very much for that. And our last question is all about MPLS or ExpressRoute. Are you guys using MPLS or ExpressRoute at all? So it looks pretty evenly split here, about 50-50 right now, almost exactly, with about 60% of you answering it. So it looks like a lot of you are using some type of, hub and spoke technology that we're going to be talking about. So thanks a lot for that. We really appreciate you giving us that little bit of information, and we'll really get on with the presentation. So what we're going to cover today is networking features inside of Azure, and we have both Brandon and Jason that will go over them with you. Some of the benefits that you're going to see to Office 365. We're going to talk a lot about the Azure Virtual WAN, what it costs, how you can configure it, the bandwidth that you can get, the preferred SD-WAN device partners from Microsoft, the ones that are already supported. Now, I'm sure that they're going to be adding to that list as we go. How to implement it. I'm sure that's why a lot of you are on this call. What are the steps it's going to take? Jason's going to do a full latency demo for you. We're going to talk about next steps. And then we have 2 other webinars this summer for Azure, and we'll let you know when they are. So real quick agenda here for you. So the first thing that we wanted to cover was, what is Azure Virtual WAN? And I'm going to let Jason, first of all, talk a little bit about that, and then I'll have Brandon just follow up on it. So give us a quick definition of what Azure Virtual WAN is, Jason.
Sure. So the Azure Virtual WAN, it's a networking service, and it makes it that's exposed for us to use, and it provides you with automated branch connectivity through the Azure network. So you can connect up different branch locations, different offices, and you can have all that traffic traverse the Azure backbone. So it's a very convenient service. Gives you some great control around security as well as performance, and in some cases can even save you money.
Oh, okay. And Brandon, what kind of use case would I do? What would I really think about using Azure Virtual WAN?
Yep, so when we're looking at Azure Virtual WAN, we're looking at trying to alleviate some of that heavy MPLS cost, trying to get that best of breed technology in there with everything today. We want those fast routes. Everybody wants that dedicated connectivity across something that they're not paying a ton of money for. Most MPLS bills per one branch can be $2,000 a month. Times that by 60 branches, it's $120,000 a month that you're spending just on connectivity. This is the benefit of Azure WAN is you can use only what you need. So if you have those 60 branches, you have 5 branches, you can tie them in and you can use this and lease it for a fraction of the cost of traditional MPLS.
Wow. Well, that's a big savings. I just want to let everyone know that on your GoToWebinar interface, there's a place to ask questions. It's a little question box. If you put them in there, we're going to be looking, see, and there's a question already in there. We're going to be looking at these questions as we go and try to answer them as we go, but we'll get to them for sure by the end of the webinar. So please take advantage of asking Brandon or Jason whatever questions you need. So let's take a look here at the architecture. If you want to just explain, Jason, what they're looking at here.
Sure. So you're looking at two models for deploying Azure WAN. The one on the left is a traditional hub and spoke model, where you have a central hub and your different locations or individuals and your virtual networks connecting to that one hub. Now, currently, the sites that you connect are all supposed to connect to a hub in the same Azure region. Now, and that's generally available right now. What is in public preview is the ability to connect sites from multiple regions to a single hub, and that's called cross-region support. So that's the hub and spoke model. On the right-hand side, we have the kind of any to any connection. It's also setting up multiple hubs. So you can select, create a hub. Current practice is one hub per region, and you can connect all the sites in that region to that hub, and the traffic can traverse the entire Azure network backbone, improve latency, and simplify your whole networking environment. Now, what's also very useful with either of these models is essentially all your traffic is now going to be going through the Azure WAN. So you can create some centralized policies with access control and security. So that is another great benefit.
So what you're saying is the traffic, if it's in different regions, actually will go through a really fast backbone that Microsoft has architected, and you're just using a single hub basically to manage those connections, correct?
Correct. And you can, and each hub can support up to 1,000 connections.
Wow. Okay. And can you have multiple hubs? So if you have a couple thousand connections?
You can, what's current practice is you can have one hub per region, and ideally, if you are using multiple hubs, the sites that you connect sites to the hub that they're in the same region of.
Okay. All right. Well, Michael has asked a question. It's SD-WAN is a very broad term. Can you clarify what your definition of it is? And Brandon, if you'll take that one for me.
Yeah, so when we're talking about SD-WAN on the webinar today, this is products similar to Cisco's Viptela, NetScaler's SD-WAN appliances, and then other kind of manufacturers that go around that piece of it. So that's anything that's trying to automate that redundancy piece of the WAN, whether it be through a central co-location or into a product like Azure Virtual WAN.
So in the way that I always understood it, it gives you different connections. Like I can have an MPLS connection, a cellular connection, a straight internet connection into one device, and then it will manage those connections for you. Is that the same definition, kind of?
That's very similar to it. So
Okay.
what you're able to do with it is it just kind of takes all those and it looks for what the best path is for that specific traffic set. And then it's letting that piece automated, so you're not worried about going into complex routing with BGP or OSPF and building that out. It's kind of taking all of that and automating it to make your life a little bit easier as a network administrator.
Oh, great. Okay. Well, now I understand it better. Okay. So networking features, we talked about this, and based around this, these are really some of the big advantages out there. So like automated large scale branch connectivity. You want to talk a little bit about that, Brandon?
Yeah, so when we're looking at Azure Virtual WAN, we're looking for simplification on the network, especially with most MPLS providers today. Some of them offer some visibility into their side of the network. Others, you have to call them, you have to place a ticket into it. It could take you days to troubleshoot an issue. Knock on wood, that doesn't happen, but we've been in many customers that is the real case. So the benefit of going into something like Azure VWAN is you're able to see that traffic as it's traversing, and it's specific to just you. You get the noise that everybody else isn't there. So you're able to go in and troubleshoot stuff a lot more efficiently.
Okay, and then the unified network and policy management, is that all part of that big scale that you're talking about?
That's definitely a part of it. So what you're able to do is you're able to see what's going on. You're able to see where it's going. There's a bunch of Azure security feature sets that are built in. You can either choose to use them or choose to go in and make your own. You're able to get a lot more customization and control your traffic and what it's doing on the virtual WAN.
Right. Now, Jason, because you've been in Azure so long, optimized routing using the global network on Microsoft, is that something that's been challenging before and now this makes it easier?
Well, was challenging for companies to get access to this type of global network before. So what this does, it's an opportunity. It's Microsoft opened up their global network environment and are allowing people to tap into it to create these WAN connections. And what's cool is when you create, you create the site-to-site connection to the hub, but from your office, you're actually not traveling from there to the hub in whatever region it's in. You're connecting to the closest, most available edge location, which there are, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds throughout the US and throughout the rest of the world.
Oh, so you don't have to connect directly to the hub.
It's finding the closest, most available edge location to get into the network. So we're in the Boca area. Our hub is in East US, but we're connecting to an edge location somewhere in the Boca area and going right in.
Is this something that's worldwide, or do you set this up by region? In other words, like US or Asia Pacific, or do you just leave it open and it traverses the whole world?
It can, well, the demo I actually put together, we're going to traverse from West US to East Asia. So we're circling the globe. I also set up a UK demo and a Brazil demo for the latency testing. But it's very easy, and that's one of the great things about the Azure WAN is it's easy to set up. It's easy to get your connection, your edge locations, your VPN devices connected. It's simplified management. You're going to get great performance. And actually, going back to the previous bullet about the unified network and policy management, as Brandon was saying, there's a lot of Azure services you can use. And you can also use your own, favorite service. Yes, there's an Azure firewall, but there's plenty of third-party solutions that you can use. Some of them are the templates are pre-built in Azure for you to spin up. So you can use, firewalls, your web application firewalls, your WAFs, your next-gen firewalls. There's all kinds of preventative, detect, and respond layers that are all accessible to you through the Azure portal, which is this web-based, clickable, configurable interface.
Oh, great. Okay. I got a couple questions here. Ernie wanted to know, I maintain two 50 megabit connections with two different ISPs. has a VPN to Azure. Is SD-WAN applicable for me?
So in that case, if you're just a single site, I wouldn't try to leverage the SD-WAN technologies. If you have multiple sites, it's what's really defined for, and it's trying to replace that MPLS backbone. So for you having those two, you could definitely use it to help out with the internet redundancy. It's not going to give you some of the advanced feature sets. So you may be able to look at a provider or manufacturer that's able to support those two. Kind of a good player off the top of my mind is somebody like Meraki or somebody on a small level. You even have some stuff with NetScaler is able to do that too, where you can essentially balance those two lines and send traffic down both of them. So in the event one fails, your users don't notice it. And most failures, if you're doing a traditional HA almost setup or an active passive setup, you're going to notice that first link go down. You're going to notice a little bit of packet loss before that second link comes in. So SD-WAN can help you a little bit with that by keeping the session state mirrored. It's usually for multiple sites, but you can definitely use it for one site too.
Okay. All right. Well, Jason, when you start going to all these international cities, I expect, a British accent when you're in Britain and, French when you're in France. So I just want to let you know that.
I didn't prepare for that.
Okay. I was just kidding, by the way. All right. Let's talk about the Office 365 benefits, because most of the people that are in Azure, at least in our experience, are taking advantage of Office 365 at the same time. So you could see here that the Office 365 traffic to enter the Microsoft network close to user given optimal use and experience. So is that the same that you were talking about, Jason, with those edge devices?
Yeah, so there's an additional configurable option with the WAN, and that's to specifically provide benefit to Office 365 users. Now, it is before everyone gets excited, I do want to just throw in that little caveat that right now this is fully supported with the Citrix VPN device, and later we'll get to the list of all the preferred partner devices. Now, support for others is coming, but that's where it works right now, and it's just going to give you an optimal performance from connecting to the closest most available endpoint, not getting thrown off by maybe some proxy setups that your network has, and getting pulled into different areas of your network. If it's you have connections to different locations, it's just going to make sure you get to the closest most available endpoint.
Okay. And this is, like you said, only through Citrix NetScaler right now, but I'm sure, they just don't like to have one solution. I'm sure there's going to be a bunch that just happens to be the first. So, Brandon, on avoiding, and I'm not familiar with the term traffic backhauling and hairpinning versus, thus saving WAN costs. Can you explain to me what those two statements are, that backhauling and hairpinning?
Yeah, so not every organization uses this, but some people will pull back to like a central data center and they throw a larger firewall in those facilities. And that's where they license their URL filtering and everything else. That causes some latency, of course, versus going out a local internet pipe. Not everybody utilizes it, but that's kind of one of the things that SD-WAN is trying to solve there.
Okay. And then delivering on Office 365 connectivity principles. I think you covered that really on the first portion of it, right, Jason?
Yeah, they have something called the optimized model, allow model. There's a default model, and those are all things we can, if we do a follow-up with anyone, we can get into more of those details and see specifically what's happening on their network.
Okay. All right. I got another question here from Jackson, and Jackson has a headquarters in San Francisco, setting up a new branch office. Once I set up a VPN connection between the site, would SD-WAN benefit me in this scenario?
Yes, if you're running multiple internet connections out of both sites, it would definitely benefit you in that connection if you're going to do some kind of a VPN between them or even through Azure at that point. So you would definitely benefit from that piece of it because it's always going to look at which path is the best for the organization, which one's doing the traffic a little bit faster. And it's building that automation into it, and that's the whole SD-WAN piece of it. So that's kind of their magic behind what they're trying to get away with is you're looking for the best path for the traffic to go down, and it's able to use both of those at the same time, which is the beauty of it. So voice may perform better down one path, whereas data may perform better down another path, and that could change. So it's constantly running tests to determine which path is better at the time of the session.
Wow. So and it's automated. You don't have to do anything. It does it for you.
Correct.
Fantastic. Hey,
Right,
I
and
got a
that's
question from Michael here for you, Jason.
okay.
He wanted to know if this, the virtual WAN, is a replacement for what was previously called Express Route Microsoft Public Peering.
So famous answer in IT.
It
I'm not
depends.
sure. Maybe it depends. So Azure WAN, it's an opportunity to connect into the Azure network and connect multiple locations. So with so ExpressRoute, for those who aren't familiar with it, that's the service in Azure that you use to connect up your MPLS connections, which is private internet. And this, so unless if you're required or compelled to use MPLS because of compliance, maybe it's compliance by your own company, or maybe it's government compliance. There is the ability to have ExpressRoute work with the Azure WAN. That is in, I think, in public preview right now. It's not GA. If you were not compelled to use MPLS, Azure WAN can be a replacement for MPLS and not only provide you better bandwidth, but also potentially significantly reduce your costs. So it's not necessarily a replacement. It can augment your MPLS setup if you have it. If you're trying to get away from it, it's a great alternative.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Jason. All right. Let's go on here. What's the difference? And this is, something that I even had a question between the Azure Virtual Network Gateway, VPN Gateway, and the Azure Virtual WAN VPN Gateway. So I'm going to give that one to you, Jason, because that's something that you probably have a lot of experience with.
Sure. So when you were doing site-to-site connections in the past and even today, you would get a Azure VPN gateway associated with your Azure Virtual Network. Now you can set up the Azure Virtual WAN, and the WAN does have its own VPN gateway, but they are separate. They are not compatible with each other. And it really just comes down to, in fact, I think we have the next slide addresses some of that. Yep, there we go. So big difference between the Azure WAN, which has its own gateway, and the VPN gateway is first the number of connections. So an Azure WAN hub can support up to 1,000 site-to-site connections, where the traditional VPN gateway can support up to 30. There's also a difference in bandwidth, where the Azure WAN can cumulatively support throughout the whole WAN up to 20 gigabits, whereas the VPN gateway, the max it can do currently is 1.25 gigabits. And that's if you go with kind of the top tier VPN gateway, which would be the VPN gateway number 3. So did that answer the question, or?
Yeah, I think that did. Now,
Okay.
So is this, when you say 1,000 connections, that's per hub?
Yes, that's per hub in the WAN.
Right. So if you ran multiple hubs in multiple regions, obviously it's scalable to quite a bit more than that.
Yes. Yeah, you can do essentially current practice is 1 hub per region and up to 1,000 connections per hub or per region. So set up more hubs, you can increase the number of connections.
Right. All right. So
which just to point out another use case, because we talked about a couple of those in the beginning. I mean, the others, people have point of sale locations, and whether it's a franchise location, I mean, you can have thousands of connections out there. That's another great use of Azure WAN if you want secure, reliable, low latency network connectivity.
Okay, great. All right, so we talked about the SD-WAN, VPN preferred vendors. Here's a list, obviously Barracuda, Checkpoint, we talked about Citrix, NetBoundary, Palo Alto, Riverbed, 128. These are all supported today, correct, Jason?
Yeah, those are the preferred vendors where they've worked with Microsoft. It supports all the features and the magic, as Brandon called it, for doing the active connections and automatically figuring out the closest, most available route. Now, it doesn't mean other devices won't work, but these are the current preferred ones, and that list is going to, certainly will expand over time.
Right. As connectivity becomes more and more integral to, the day-to-day operations of a company, that's why SD-WAN is so popular now, giving you that redundancy, giving you that really no lag. If one fails, it just automatically moves it over. Am I right, Jason? Brandon?
That's correct. I mean, back in the day, you used to have to go through and configure multiple routes. You had to go back and configure HA on the devices. You had to go in. If you wanted to point certain traffic down one way or another, you had to go in and configure that all. And then it became really hard to manage. And that's kind of where the SD-WAN piece brought that software layer in and started to make that piece a little bit more automated. They started to add in some of those tests, the IPSLA being built into it. You don't have to go and set it up. They're really trying to ease that relationship as being a network administrator, especially on the WAN side of it, to make it a lot easier. And then also, as bandwidth has increased over time, you now have, in some cases, a gigabit connection for $100 a month on a private IP schema. It depends on where you're located. It changes for everybody. But what we've seen is that that's a lot cheaper and a lot more effective than that 1 megabit MPLS connection, because we can send so much data over that path that we're not noticing that jitter and latency anymore on voice calls, especially once you enter the SD-WAN portion of it. It's going to go ahead, it's going to buffer that call. It's going to send the packets, make sure they're in the proper order, and sending it down 2 paths. So I've seen devices where you could pull the plug on one ISP and still keep a voice call flowing.
That's unbelievable. I know that we're doing a lot with virtual desktops right now, specifically running in the cloud. And this is almost a must, because now with your desktop being in the cloud, if you get disconnected, you're done. You don't even have a desktop anymore. So this is almost like mandatory now for any of our, virtual desktops that we're doing. So let's go on to the next one. So, Jason put together here a really nice list of procedures that you need to take care of to be able to configure and set up this environment. If you want to just walk them through this real quick, Jason, before you give them the demo, this will give them an idea of what they have to do to get to the point where you're doing the demo.
Sure, and actually, if you want to give me presenter rights, I'll actually show a virtual WAN in the portal, and I'll talk through those steps.
Well, I am making you presenter right now.
All right, let's see, show my screen, and
I'll let you know when we see it. And
right.
Isn't technology a great thing? We see your screen.
And you see the Azure portal?
Yes, we do.
All right, wanted to make sure I'm showing the right screen. So as much as I'd love to take credit for putting those steps together, this isn't, Jason's way of how to do it. Those are the Microsoft steps. We always follow, the documentation, the steps provided Microsoft for creating resources. That said, I mean, we've been working in the Azure space. Well, I've been working in the Azure space for about almost 10 years. We have a lot of knowledge, experience of, about all the what ifs and can we do that or why is that happening? But yeah, the basic steps are, you create your virtual network, you create your virtual WAN, and that's the resource I'm showing here. I created a virtual WAN. Once you create it, you create some VPN sites, and we'll just wait for those to appear.
And for those of you that are asking, yes, the presentation with those steps will be sent to you after this, along with a link to, we are recording the webinar. So if you want anyone to be able to watch this later, that we'll be able to do that.
Yep, so after you create the sites, you create your hubs or your hub, then you go back to your sites and you associate the VPN site with the hub. So you can see I have some sites associated here. I'll go back and kind of explain some of the setup here. And then once you do that, you connect your VNets, your Azure Virtual Networks, to the hubs. And you do that here. So I have a VNet and a WAN hub connected in West US, and I have one connected in East Asia. Now, after all this is set up, you can view the health of the resource and you can monitor their connections. The good news is, I mean, you can do all this manually. You know, it's click, click, click configuration, but you can also automate all this with scripts. So if you're spinning up sites on a periodic basis and you have you want to help standardize your processes and really get into a great DevOps mode, you can absolutely automate this. Now I'm going to step back to the overview page because earlier we talked about the hub and spoke model and the any to any connection. And I actually have both set up here. And that's why you see two of the hubs, West US and East Asia, are connected to a VPN site. The other two, I disconnected because I wanted to show the single hub model from a different region, so cross region support. And then we also have what's not showing here, a VM that's in a VNet using the cross region support connected to the West Coast hub. So we'll be able to demo kind of three scenarios here. So with that, let's pull in. I have my East Coast US East VM, and I have my US West VM. So I have, let's see. So 26 is in Brazil. So this is the VM in the East region, and we're getting 100 and what's the average? 117 milliseconds from that site down to Brazil. And 18 this is the one that doesn't have a hub, and this one's in the UK South. There we're getting looks average maybe 90 milliseconds. Let's see, where's 22? 22 is in the Asia East region. So we're getting a 208 millisecond, which I think is probably the furthest. And what else do we have? I have wait, which one did I open? We started East, so yeah, let's make sure we do West Coast, which is 16. So this is East region to West Coast region, about 60, 62, 63 milliseconds. So all that's traffic is traversing the Azure network. These are our hub locations, and notice that only two of the hubs are connected. So the other, which is West US and East Asia, the others are using cross region support to a single hub in a different region. And to give you an idea of, all the places you can set up hubs, this is kind of your worldwide coverage.
Jason, can I ask you a couple questions?
Absolutely.
All right. Well, first of all, Godfrey had a question for you. He wanted to know if there was any built-in compliance security features in the Azure WAN.
Yep, great question. So, is there security in the Azure WAN? Yes, and that is in place and managed by Microsoft. The WAN is a Microsoft service that you can use. Now, as far as additional layers of security, many of those you would handle at your Azure Virtual Network level, where you can put preventative detect and respond solutions in place. Examples of those are on your VNet, you can enable DDoS. There's the basic DDoS that comes with your Azure VNet at no cost, and then you can upgrade that to the full solution. But on the Azure WAN itself, these are the configurable options. Where you're going to want to take a look is in the one of the places is in your Azure Virtual Networks. So let's look at one of the ones that we had connected. Here you can have your DDoS protection, you can do firewall, you also have your NSGs. There's also other tools that Microsoft has, Azure Advanced Threat Protection. If you're using Azure Active Directory as your authentication model, there are a lot of tools associated with that you can turn on.
Okay. All right. I hope that answers Godfrey's questions. If it didn't, Godfrey, ask another one. Steve has just one question. He wants to know, are those sites Azure sites where the servers reside, or like a branch site with employees? And so Azure to Azure or Azure to branch location?
So these are Azure regions. Those are virtual machines I set up in the Azure data centers because we don't have branch locations in Brazil and Asia.
Right. So this would be Azure to Azure is what the answer to the question would be.
Correct.
Okay. I hope that answers your question, Steve. And he says yes. All right, go ahead, Jason. Sorry to interrupt.
Let's see. Well, I mean, that would be kind of the latency demo. What I can do is just show you latency from the West Coast VM. And this is West Coast to Brazil, which is averaging about 171 milliseconds. 18 is UK South. Let's see, 22 is Asia East. And let's see, there 17 is West Coast to East Coast. Now, some of those questions about security, there's a lot more to talk around security. For doing proof of concepts with connecting your branch locations, they're easy to set up. We've done a number for clients, and again, because you're not traversing from your site all the way to the hub, you're connecting to the nearest edge location, which puts you in the Azure network. You will see an increase in your ping tests, but it's not necessarily that much more It all depends on where your branch is and where your hub is and the nearest edge location. But easy test to set up, and generally everyone's quite happy with the results.
All right, and I know that Ernie asked a question because they have a project in the sub-Sahara African desert. Do you know if there's any, way that he could run some type of test in that region?
So these are all the Azure data centers where you can create hubs.
I don't see any in that.
Right, so sub-Sahara, you're gonna have to stretch to one of the other hubs.
Yeah.
There are some that are coming soon in the UAE, and you could do. It's very easy to spin up and do testing. Try France South, try South Africa North, maybe UAE Central, and see what's giving you the best performance.
Okay. Now, one question came in from Chris. He wanted to know that how Microsoft charges for this. I think that was on one of the slides, and maybe if you're done with the demo, maybe we'll go back to the slides and we can just go over that a little bit.
I can also, we have a slide, but I can also show it here.
Oh, okay. So, why don't we do that?
And let's see. So when you spin up a hub, the hub, you pick how many scale units it has, and the scale units is associated with the bandwidth. So a single scale unit is 500 megabits, and you pay 36 and a tenth of a cent per hour per scale unit. Right. So that equates to about $263, $264 a month per hub. Now you can increase your scale unit. Let's say I want 1,000 megabits. Most regions support up to 2 gigabits per hub. Now, one of the cool things with the hubs is they're all part of the same WAN. So each hub you add, it's a cumulative total. So let's say I have 3 hubs that are a single scale unit, 500 megabits each. That means my Azure WAN bandwidth is 1.5 gigabits. Or I can make each hub 2 scale units. So they would be, each hub would be 1 gigabit. So I'd have a cumulative bandwidth of 3 gigabits for those 3 hubs.
With a maximum of 20, right?
With a maximum of 20, correct. And then you pay for each site-to-site connection, which is 8 cents an hour. So that equates to about $58 a month per site.
Okay, I think that answers their questions for them.
Okay, and then they also list out the point-to-site locations. Last I checked, point-to-site was still in preview, but with pricing here, it may have gone GA. I'd have to check up on that.
Okay.
So point-to-site, for those who aren't familiar with it, is that's like a VPN client. So I'm doing a connection from my laptop to, or from a specific server. So instead of a network connection to the hub, this is from a specific device.
Sounds good. All right, you have any more demo, or should we go back to the slides, Jason?
I'm out of demo because
you're out of demo.
It's pretty straightforward. You create your hub, you get the devices, they can auto connect. If you're using one of the preferred devices, it's in some cases they automatically connect to your hub.
Okay.
not hard to set up. The tricky parts are when you're looking at your overall network. And also if you want to start taking a look at preventative detect and respond layers around security, that's where, kind of doing an overall view and assessment, becomes important.
Okay, and well, that's where we're actually up to. Our next steps would be to talk about, to request an Azure WAN assessment, see if it fits your environment, see if this is something that, will benefit you guys out there in your travel into the cloud, especially if you have multiple branch offices, right, Brandon? That's kind of the key component I'm getting out of this, is really multiple sites. Am I right?
That's dead on. This is if you have multiple sites, you're looking to reduce that latency, you're looking to cut back on that MPLS cost. That's when we start to look at this type of solution.
So, and then we also have a network discovery assessment for you, just to maybe help you optimize what you're doing from a networking standpoint. We talked about SD-WAN, we talked about, the NetScalers and the other products that are out there, see if they can fit in there. And then also see if you qualify for Azure Discovery deployment services with Microsoft. I mean, these are things that we can help you take advantage of, the programs that Microsoft has available out there. We do it for customers really on a daily basis all the time. I'm going to ask you just one more poll question here. Everyone's on there, so let me just bring it up and we'll do the last one. If you would like to have any type of assessment, whether it's an Azure WAN assessment or a network discovery assessment, just check on the box there. If you say yes, we'll follow up with you, and make sure that we get the right resources for you. So right now we're about 16% of the people answered. So I'm going to just leave that up there for a second. And I do want to let you know that we do have 2 more upcoming webinars of things that are really starting to explode in Azure. On July 30th, Azure Sentinel. Now, this is their SIM. And I mean, this is something that if you take a look at the interface, and I'm sure Jason's going to go into a lot of detail in that webinar about the interface and how it actually works, it's phenomenal. I'm not a security guy, but I could even drive this thing, I think, at least a little bit anyway. And then obviously Jason's passion is advanced analytics. This is what he does in his sleep. Am I right, Jason?
Oh yeah, every night. Every
night. So, and that's coming on August 20th. If you attend all 3 webinars, and we know exactly who attends, how long you've been on, and I mean, this go to webinar thing really keeps track of things. You're going to be entered into a raffle for a free Surface Go on August 20th. So just want to let you know those things. I'm going to look at the questions and see if there are any more here from anyone. So give me just 1 second. And it looks like the last one we have is from Godfrey. He asked again about built-in security. I believe that, there's security options that you can enable. Am I right, Jason?
Yeah, security options built into the Azure VNets that you connect to your WAN, and there's more, and that's a bigger conversation, and we'd be happy to do a follow-up and walk through some of those.
Well, I appreciate your time today, ladies and gentlemen, and both Jason, Brandon, and myself are here for you. If you have any questions, please reach out to your champion representative. We'll get on the phone. Like we said, we'll be more than happy to help you. Have a great night.